Frank Williams was an ordinary man who did extraordinary things.
He was a very affectionate child, very respectful, and very loving.
He was, what they say, a good guy, someone to be proud of.
He was the ultimate humanitarian. He cared about people.
He gave his athletes exposure.
Very, very well schooled in the game, very fundamentally sound.
That was the teacher in him. You know, he believed that the little things made the big difference.
He was always in the game, always. I never heard him yell. I never heard him curse.
Frank was an excellent coach. He was very dedicated. He was intense.
We used to call him the silent assassin.
Frank was a type of person that if he believed in something, you couldn't stop him.
You couldn't ask for a better friend.
Everyone seemed to flock to him as kind of like a father figure.
He just had this deep care and concern for others.
He was just a phenomenal athlete.
I think that he was that special of a person that his story, so many years removed, can still have such a positive impact, and his demeanor and his character can still touch so many lives.
Frank Rudolph Williams was born on May 19, 1944, in Washington, D.C., to Rudolph and Ann Williams. An only child, he was surrounded by a large, close-knit family, including a special aunt, Sarah Hunter.
Oh, he's always been the type of person that wanted to be ahead. He never wanted to be the back, and he always wanted to be a leader.
Leaders at the 12th Street Boys Club noticed his potential when, as a child himself, he was selected to coach the younger boys.
He would come home so frustrated he didn't know what to do, just mad as he could be. And so I said, wait a minute, Frank, you've got to remember that you're their coach, you're going to teach them. I said, now you have got to know that it's not about losing or winning, it's about how well you play the game. I said, so if you're still in the boys that they play the game the best that they can do, I said, you'll find out you'll get better. And so he tried that method. So he came home one day and said, oh, sir, you're right. You're right. So I used to always tell Frank, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whatever you want to be. And don't let nobody stop you from it. Don't care what they say or what they do. And so he abided by that. He followed his dream. He didn't let anything stop him from doing what he, wanted to do.
Frank's mother and my father were sister and brother. He liked the Western, the cowboys. In my grandmother's living room, under the window there was a low radiator. That's from the heat. He would get up on there and leap off and run around like he was Lash LaRue. He had maybe a broom as his horse and would run around throughout. The apartment wasn't that big, but a long hallway and so forth, and to the back of the apartment, and that's what he would do.
But the days of innocence would not last long. Overnight, his life would change forever.
Uncle Rudy and Aunt Ann were looking at television, the news, reading the paper in the bed, and her arms dropped from where I understand it. And that's where she passed. She had a heart attack and died instantly. Devastating at the age of 13 to go to bed and you wake up and your mom is gone.
In the early 1960s, Williams attended Calvin Coolidge Senior High School just as integration arrived in the D.C. public schools.
I met Frank in 1960 or 61 on the basketball court at Emory Playground. I think he had basically just moved to Northwest on 8th Street that year. Basically, I wound up calling him Will Penny. I've seen him stop in the middle of a jump shot to pick up his change that came out of his pocket. As an athlete, he was all around. I mean, run, jump, speed. But baseball, few people would recognize, was his better sport. But he had a love for basketball. The coaches there really cared about us and our future. They provided a certain degree of guidance to ensure that we would pursue our athletic careers. And we recognized the purpose of education was very simple. It allows you to make better decisions.
When I met Frank, it was like he immediately took me under his wing. He knew that I was with a kind of rough crowd, and I needed some fine tuning or whatever. So he was more like a mentor to me. He was an inspiration, and I am a Frank Williams disciple. We got to be friends more so, I think, the older we got, because I could see the path that he was going down, and I wanted to be just like it. Every high school basketball game, his dad was there. And that, to me, said a lot about him and his family. I quit my good government job to go work at what I loved doing, and I ended up working in the prison at Lorton Youth Center. And it was one of the best jobs I ever had in my life. And it turned out to be one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. Most rewarding experience, I should say. And Frank was very instrumental in that.
I was proud of him, especially when in high school he did very well up at Coolidge High School. And then he got his scholarship to go to Menominee, Wisconsin. So he went out there. But I think that by him coming back to Howard, he was captain of the basketball team there. And then to go on and teach at his high school as a basketball coach and as a physical ed teacher. So I just said he'd done well. That's what I thought he had done well.
I met Frank Rudolph Williams in 1958. It was the summer before high school, and he had just moved in our neighborhood. So then we started dating. Started dating in 10th grade at Coolidge. Education played a very large role in both of our lives. He wanted to get an education because that was important to him. And he had gotten scholarships to different schools, various schools, and he decided to take the scholarship that was offered to him at Stout State, a small school in Wisconsin, and he went there. And he was there for a year, and we communicated really by writing. We didn't talk on the phone too much because it was so expensive. But he wrote a letter every day. I got a letter every day, and on Mondays I would get 2 letters. On my wedding day, I was coming down the aisle, and I saw everybody standing up there with high water pants on. I could not believe this. It looked like it was a joke. And he was standing just as proud, not worrying about the pants being too short or anybody else's pants being too short. I understand they were switching pants, trying to see whether one pair would fit someone. They thought they had gotten the pants had gotten confused. But you know what? He was not upset at all. He was standing there looking at me like, this is the love of my life, and we are getting ready to do this.
Wild Bunch! The Wild Bunch was a group of guys that were ball players in the city, that finished school, and we played touch football. That's how it started.
And believe it or not, we didn't realize that we were playing professional touch. And the reason why I say that, at that time, the taxi squads for the Redskins, the Colts, the local professional teams, That's how they stayed in shape, by playing touch out in Montgomery County.
Myself, Sleepy Daniels, James Sleepy Daniels, Peanut Edwards, Michael Hawkins, Eddie Hales, Frank Dorsett, and that was the team.
To represent those who are not with us, these two chairs are their symbol. Frank Williams and James Sleepy Daniels are the two original members who are no longer with us.
Now, we would play Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock. Now, you can imagine guys that are in their early 20s and teenagers, you know, getting up Sunday morning to play football when you've been hanging out all Saturday night. But he made sure that we were all there to be able to play football at 9 o'clock Sunday morning. Now, that in itself is a lot.
My mentor in corporate America happened to be the chairman of the board, which helped me rise rapidly and to a pretty high level. First black vice president in Xerox's history. So that I understood how mentors could be helpful to one's career. So when I started working with children, I had a mentor-mentee relationship. Frank showed me something different. Frank was not a mentor to children. He was not even a coach to children. He was a father to children.
Coach Williams came into my life at a time right when my own father, my biological father, had recently passed of cancer. I was 13 years old, just about midway through middle school, junior high school at that time. Coach Williams provided an environment where young guys like me could develop the game. I guess he sort of pointed us toward looking at the future. Coach was very resourceful, so he made sure that we had activities and were exposed to other things outside of just playing basketball. He was very concerned about image. He required that we wear shirt and slacks to go to games. You know, we're talking about a public school. So, you know, he didn't want anybody coming around, you know, looking bummy and not the right image that he wanted to project. We wore all white socks. Our uniform always had to look right, shirts tucked in. We had warm-ups. Everything should be neat, clean, and that's the way he wanted it. And again, he modeled that for us.
When I moved to Washington, D.C., my cousin was going to Coolidge High School, so naturally I followed. My aunt, she knew that I loved basketball, so she introduced me to Coach Williams and said, you know, maybe he can try out for the team. He was very soft-spoken, but he had a presence about him in that when he said something, you obeyed. And I remember he would stand me in front of the rim and have me shoot like 100 shots where if it hit the rim, it didn't count. It had to hit all net, and you had to do it over and over and over again. So repetition was key for him. I used to wear my hat backwards, and he would tell me to turn my hat around. And I would always say, Coach, why? He said people sometimes judge the book by its cover, and he didn't want us to miss out on an opportunity because someone saw us in a different light. He didn't want us to get pigeonholed. He wanted us to see that there were different options out there. You know, maybe we won't be professional basketball players, but maybe we can be architects, maybe we can be lawyers, doctors.
I met Frank when I was assigned to teach at Calvin Coolidge High School. I believe it was around 1971, 1972. Frank was already an instructor there. He was, I believe, a disciple of John Wooden, the UCLA coach. And I think he patterned a lot of his teaching and instruction when it came to basketball off of tapes, reading about certain situations. I think we all had the same idea in mind of getting youngsters to better themselves educationally, academically, and then moving on to better things in life. Once the gym was built and it was open, he was elated. He was very, very happy. He had a place he called his own. He no longer had to go out and beg someone to let him come into their gym or to go into his personal finances to rent a place. He had a place. On game days, Frank was suit and tie. He was about business, and he was always very professional looking. And he made sure he passed it down through the athletes. Some of them didn't have it, so Frank reached out to some of his buddies who had things in the closet that they didn't need. Some of the athletes were tall, so some of his buddies played ball and they had things. And he back in the storeroom, he would have coats, ties there, so it was no excuse. You'd be surprised some of the things he went through to instill neatness and things in his athletes. Frank was a little GQ himself.
When I arrived in Coolidge, it was 1972. Even in that early date, he was almost a legend then, by the time I got there. I was a social studies teacher, but I was in a lot of things because I was a senior class sponsor. And as senior class sponsor, and the person who did the yearbook, you got to know the faculty a lot. You got to see them in their own milieu. So I was down in the gym a lot. I went to a lot of basketball games. I don't remember Frank getting up and yelling and jumping and screaming as many basketball coaches do. He was very much devoted to his team and to seeing that his students both did their homework and played the sport. I remember he brought his kids to school when they were little girls, and I was very impressed with that.
He took them with him when he was coaching. He took them with him when he went to play ball. Wherever he went, he took them with him. He would be very proud. He would be so proud of them. They are so unbelievable. I look at them and I say, boy, if your father could see this.
He loved photography, and he decided that two of us were going to sort of make these fun pictures together. And we started making funny faces, and so he would teach me how to use the camera and take these pictures. And they were really silly pictures that we were doing funny faces, and then I would do the same. And so I have both sets of those pictures, even though we're not together in them. For me, it triggers such a special memory of that fun time that we had together. I remember that math was a subject that I avoided like the plague, and my dad made me feel like I could do it. He would sit right there at the desk with me, and sometimes he would be talking to me and helping me, but other times he was just literally sitting there and just sort of in his own little way coaching me and letting me know that you can do this, you've got this. And I think I would be remiss not to mention the sports bug, that there, certainly from when I was young, became quite obsessed with basketball and just sports in general. And I know that came from my dad directly. And I'm so incredibly thankful that God allowed me to be brought into this world under his care. And I pray that all the work that my mom and my sister and I have done has made him proud. And I'm just so thankful for that. And I just want to thank him for what he left with us.
I spent so much time with my dad. Every opportunity that he had to take my sister and I out, he did. So even though basketball was his 9 to 5, he made sure that every Saturday, every Sunday, he was with Ryan and Randy. And all of his friends always talk about that. So because I spent so much time with him in a short period, I have a lot of good, distinct memories. We were a part of the school. And that's why I think whenever we run into some of the players now, they're always amazed to see us because they felt like they knew us. They would treat us like we were their little sisters. I'm in the public health field, and I work on clinical research trials. It is very special to think that what I am doing professionally ultimately is in some way directed to what he spent his life doing in a different way. I have coworkers who always say, how are you able to keep so calm and cool and collected? And when I hear stories of my father, I realize that is very much a trait that was passed down from him to me, and how I carry out my work and what I do and how I interact with people, making sure that what I'm saying has been well thought out and that it's going to come across in the right way.
I was a physical education teacher. It's basically how I met Frank, because we go to physical education meetings and all. I left teaching after 5 years when I got the job at the Post. And that's how I met the hundreds and hundreds of coaches over the years. You know, football, basketball, baseball, track and field. I covered every sport. You know, there's some coaches who teach basketball, and there are other coaches who play at basketball. When I say play at basketball, their kids were shoot and chase. You know, my turn, your turn. You shot last time, I'm gonna shoot this time. And coaches didn't have a problem with that, because all they thought about was winning the game. Frank's teams were never like that. They were always very well schooled in the game. He was old school. They were fundamentally sound, they were structured, and they had skills.
For a long time, a lot of people were talking about he never could win the big game. But right around the time right before he passed, he actually won everything. And then I think he did it again the next year. And then after he left, his assistant, Coach Leonard Farello, went on to win a couple of championships, which were still students that Frank had recruited. So I think that was a major accomplishment.
And he won far more games than he lost over his career. It was just short-lived, but he was a wonderful coach.
Williams spent years building a strong athletic program at Coolidge and investing in his players, both on and off the court. His 16th year was pure gold, paying off in a string of accomplishments, including 2 historic wins for Coolidge High School.
And the Colts went on to capture the Inter-High Championship and then the first city championship in the history of the school. Coach Frank Williams' dedication, perseverance, and masterful guidance has earned him the honor of Fast Breaks Coach of the Year.
Frank, you know, just a tremendous job after kind of a slow start in December. You got it in high gear and you really rolled and won the Inter-High Championship. And what amazed me was that you were able to keep your kids playing hard during the Inter-High tournament when you knew you had a berth locked up in the city title game. How did you prepare them for that?
Yeah, it was pretty tough, but Coolidge had never won an Inter-High tournament championship. We had finished second twice, third twice, and I told the kids it would be great in terms of the entire year to be able to be the first Coolidge team to win the tournament championship.
And that you did, and on to Cole Fieldhouse. And yet, with a minute to go, it looked like the Cinderella story wouldn't come true. You were about 4 points down. What was going through your head at that point? 4 down, a minute to go against a great Gonzaga team.
Well, I really felt that we were going to win the game all along. We had been in that situation before. We had played in 1 triple overtime game during the regular season and 2 timeouts. And one of the things we try to teach the kids to never give up and always feel that you can win no matter what the situation.
Frank, for being selected as Coach of the Year by Morgan Wooten and I, we'd like to present you with this Fast Break Trophy, and congratulations on an outstanding season.
Thank you.
Indeed.
I picked him Coach of the Year one year, and they had won the championship. And I set up the picture at the White House. The kids really, really looked good, and they gave a good image. It was really nice. And President Reagan came out, and he was smiling. He said, "Oh, this looks like a basketball team." He was looking up at him. You know, like, "You must be that wonderful coach." He and Frank shook hands and traded little comments. But it was a wonderful day.
Frank Williams lost his life to brain cancer at age 43, leaving a void in the lives of his family, friends, former colleagues, and students that is felt even today.
I lost my husband of brain cancer in 1987, which was something that was not expected. He worked that Friday and he died that Monday. Not knowing he had brain cancer, he didn't know it and I didn't know it. And you wake up on Tuesday morning and you're a single parent. And you look at all of the things that you've tried to do for your children, and you look at all of the things that you've tried to do for yourself, and you realize that you can't do it. 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 and you're wondering, how am I going to survive this?
I was 4 years old when my dad passed in 1987, and it's funny, people always ask me, what do I remember about my father? And at times I have to wonder, am I remembering actual things that happened, or am I remembering stories that people have told me and I've made them real, true memories?
I don't think I fully grasped what was happening in the moment. I just knew that the person that I loved and respected and admired was suddenly not there.
And I remember when Coach Williams passed, they drove by Coolidge, they drove through the neighborhood, and then they went to the cemetery. That funeral was one of the largest funerals I ever remember. And believe me, I know a lot of large funerals. That was one of the largest ones that I recall ever seeing.
It happened so quick. It happened so quick, and it was like you couldn't believe, like, oh, it's not Frank. Lord knows not Frank.
Frank died in May, I think, of '87, and of course it was too late to get into the '87 yearbook, so we wanted to give a tribute to the coach. And since I was a yearbook director at the time, we devoted a couple of pages in tribute to Frank and all he did for Coolidge and the basketball teams.
Coach Williams dedicated his life to helping young people realize their fullest potential. His legacy of mentorship lives on through the work of the Frank R. Williams Scholarship Fund.
You know, being in America, here you are, you live in America, a country that we give so much to so many people, and not to give a child an opportunity to go to school, to get a higher education, that hurts me.
For a long time, my mom always expressed that she wanted to do something to give back to Coolidge.
We started the fund because we obviously believed very strongly in the work that our father had done, and felt like, given that his life was shortened unexpectedly, that we wanted that work that he had begun to continue, and to leave an imprint on others, that we knew that he had really started something that was important.
It's funny how when you have something that you want to do, you start contacting and reaching out to people, and people were just so willing to help us and to use their talents and their resources to make sure that we would have the proper procedures and plans in place to have a nonprofit organization.
We would like to give a full ride. A full ride would be wonderful to give. And what we have been talking about is trying to help them for 4 years, because it's very difficult. Most scholarships are given in the first year, and then you don't get them all for the 4 years. And many of them may drop out, and we don't want them to drop out. We want them to get a full education.
We tend to pick organizations that are close to our hearts. So when we were considering, sort of where are we going to put our support for the first year and then every year subsequent, we felt a strong calling from our hearts to support the Frank R. Williams Scholarship Fund. And so for us, it was sort of a no-brainer. When we saw the great things that could be done with the funds that we would contribute, it was just an absolute, where do I, sign my check? Where can I donate the dollars that we know are going to do something great?
I mean, people always think bigger has to be better. I mean, this is the American way. The American mantra is it has to be big, has to be national. You've got to get hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, or else it's not going to be impactful. When you keep it small and you kind of build that community and you kind of get that organic growth, that's where you really kind of see the power of what these donations and what the scholarship fund can create.
And Randy and I have been close friends for many years now. So I was honored to be asked to be on the scholarship board last year. And so I'm part of the educational committee. So we take on the responsibility of reviewing the applications when they come in the spring, and then using some of our background to make a decision as to who we think would be a good recipient of the scholarship. I think it's really inspiring too to read these applications and to read the essays that these young people write, and to just see how much they're involved in, and to really see, I think, just like Mr. Williams, how much sports has really shaped their lives and really made them, really disciplined in terms of what they want to do.
I don't know where this will be years from now, but I know the man's legacy must be with us beyond self, beyond me, or even the next generation.
If people want to instill Frank Williams characteristics in their kids, or want to contribute to a scholarship fund that would promote his values, that's all you have to say. His name is on the gym. They could have put anybody. They could have put Martin Luther King there. They could have put Gandhi. They could have put Marion Barry. I mean, they could have put anybody's name here was very, very instrumental in the city, but they didn't. They chose Frank Williams. Now, why? Why Frank Williams? Because he instilled the characteristics that are going to make people proud to have their kids be at Coolidge or play on his team or any other team, because he played the game honestly and fairly. And these are the type of people you dedicate things to.
He always said, if you treat someone with respect, they'll respect you back. And if you're willing to work for it, you can attain it. Those were the characteristics that he instilled in us.
He was a leader. The lives he touched, those skills that he had, he has instilled those skills in so many people.
I know in reading some of the stuff that I read, I think he actually, 95% of his students actually went to college.
All he cared about was giving back to his students, and it wasn't about him. It wasn't about any of the accolades that he received. It was just simply about the love of teaching and teaching a sport, and in that sport, teaching them life lessons.
And I really think he embodied what God calls us to do, and that's to serve and to treat others as we would want to be treated. And I think about all of those aspects that he truly lived out.
What would it be like if you know, a parent was taken away from you too soon? And how would you want that person to be remembered? You would want them to see them as you saw them. A wonderful father, a parent, a loving husband, a coach, and a mentor. So if, you know, I can make you understand who that person was, then I've succeeded and done my job.
My goal, as long as I'm able to work on this fund, is to continue my dad's dream of showing his students that there is this opportunity, and once you have this opportunity, other opportunities come from it. Ideally, I would like to see it be in a place where it's completely sustainable, so that after several years and many, many years, once, you know, my family is maybe not around, that there is someone else carrying on the legacy of my father. I think that that would be the ultimate goal. And I would love to be able to get to a place where we're able to help more students and help students for as long as we can, not just financially, but with mentorship and any sort of support that they need, because higher education was so important to my dad. He knew that it was a way to open up a lot of doors.